Welcome to Mindset Mastery Moments, the best growth mindset podcast, recognized by Million Podcasts and ranked as a top mindset podcast by FeedSpot. We're proud to be in the top 1% on Listen Notes. Join Dr. Alisa Whyte as we explore powerful insights and strategies to elevate your mindset. Let's dive in.
Hello, disruptors, and welcome back to Mindset Mastery Moments, the show where we challenge outdated thinking, claim personal agency, and activate the mindset required to live, feed, and heal at the next level. I'm your host, Dr. Alisa Whyte, the #1 Mindset Disruptor. Let me start today's episode with a thought that might stretch your imagination just a little bit. What if the future of health isn't just biochemical? What if it's energetic? What if the reason so many people are exhausted, inflamed, anxious, mentally foggy isn't because they're simply lacking nutrients or medication, or it's about lifestyle, but something deeper happening at the quantum level of the body? Yeah, I said quantum level of the body. Now, before anyone listening starts thinking this conversation is going to drift off into science fiction, just stay with me here, because today's guest sits right at the intersection of science, wellness, innovation, and disruption. So I am speaking to a disruptor myself. And if there is one thing we do on this show is explore ideas that challenge what we've always believed and what we've always been told. Today's conversation is about longevity, cognition, energy, and the emerging field of quantum wellness. Because the truth is, most people are trying to solve modern health problems using old models of thinking. And sometimes the breakthrough happens when someone asks a completely different question. So today we're exploring a new frontier in health innovation. Just buckle up, sit back as we get ready to challenge the status quo. My guest today is Ashley Grace, the Chief Marketing Officer of Ignaton, a Colorado-based quantum wellness technology company pioneering the use of what they call solar origin energy to enhance cognition, cognitive function, and longevity. Ashley's career, though, is so interesting. I had a good time discovering his work. His career spans more than 3 decades of innovation across healthcare, wellness, and consumer products. Early in his career, he helped pioneer direct-to-consumer pharmaceutical advertising, helping shape the modern media landscape around how pharmaceutical companies communicate with the public. But his journey took a dramatic turn after a personal health crisis involving chronic migraines and nerve damage, an experience that pushed him to explore alternative solutions beyond conventional medicine. That path eventually led him to become the founding Chief Marketing Officer of Charlotte's Web, one of the most well-known hemp extract brands in the world, where he helped to grow the company from 4 million to 40 million in revenue in under 2 years. Today, he's helping lead a new frontier in wellness innovation through Ignaton. I'm going to say that again. It's Ignaton, a company using advanced quantum physics research to enhance nutritional compounds and explore new ways to support brain health, longevity, and human performance. It is my honor to welcome you, Ashley, to Mindset Mastery Moments. We're so excited to have this conversation. As you may know, I am a bit of a nerd when it comes to the brain. I suffered a brain injury when I was younger, and so everything new and innovative with treating and strengthening cognition, I'm here for it. Tell us who you are in your own words and what you do and exactly why you do it.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. White, for having me. It's a pleasure to be here and great to meet you. Big fan of what you're doing. And again, thank you so much. And I love the whole idea of disrupting. That's what I do. That's what I enjoy. And
Yes, you
I think
are.
our world needs more of that in a positive, peaceful way.
Yes,
But
of course.
disruption is what moves us forward and advances our society. I'm honored to be described in that fashion. So thank you. I think one of the things I wanted to build off of right out of the gate and what you said was, Nikola Tesla said that if you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration.
Mm,
And that's really, what if he was really talking about our bodies,
mhm.
not necessarily about machinery? And I think that's a really good lens by which we could have this conversation, because what we are doing is blazing new trails in that exact area by using energy and frequency to actually enhance the effectiveness of known, proven supplement ingredients in a way that's been shown in university studies that have been published in peer reviewed journals to make those ingredients work better for our bodies.
Yes.
Again, this is better than placebo and better than the same ingredients that don't have that quantum charge. So the
Mhm.
science is science fact, not science fiction. It's actually proven out to be real, and it's exactly what Mr. Tesla was talking about in terms of the secrets being related back to energy and frequency and vibration.
Absolutely. And you know what? I never put that correlation together, but I as soon as you said it, it made absolute sense to me. I mean, I bet it's been around forever, but it's been about a couple years since I learn that our bodies itself is full, it's just electricity, it's electric matter, right? So let's start at the beginning of your journey, because I think context does matter. You spent years helping to shape the pharmaceutical industry. Then you had a personal health experience that forced you to step outside that system and ask different questions. Take us back to that moment. What happened in your own health journey that made you realize that traditional model of treating your chronic illness was not giving you the answers and you had to go looking for something else?
Yeah, and I kind of like to say that I'm making amends for creating such a huge industry of pharmaceutical advertising. Though, in all fairness, we probably wouldn't have much on the television screens if we didn't have pharmaceutical advertising. So,
True.
there's a yin and a yang there.
Yes.
But I was early on in my career. That's what I was doing, and I had an accident. I was playing in a company softball game, and one of those things where I was running toward the ball to catch it, and I'm screaming at the top of my lungs, "I got it, I got it." Everybody hears me except for the guy running toward me, and as I dove to catch the ball, his knee impacted me straight on in the face. I'm very lucky to be alive,
Yes.
very lucky to be walking and seeing and talking and having a good life. Uh, Shattered my orbital bone, and I had a lot of, nerve damage and nerve pain for many years. And the
Wow.
traditional pharma industry that I had been so close to really couldn't help me,
Mm.
because the drugs that they were offering would basically, I had to make a choice. Do I want to work and continue to be a part of the working environment, or do I want to stay home and be on drugs, because I couldn't
Mm.
function? So I really had to seek out alternative treatments and open my mind to more natural ways to heal.
Mhm.
And thankfully, I discovered CBD as part of that journey, and it really changed my entire life. Took away the migraines, took away the nerve pain. I began to heal.
Wow.
And through that process, I'd always thought of CBD and cannabis, as a psychoactive compound, and actually enjoyed cannabis along the way in my younger days.
Mhm.
But I began to see it as more of a health and wellness opportunity. I began to see the medicinal attributes of it firsthand. And so I wanted to be a part somehow in my disruptive nature to help others discover this, because
Mm.
I thought, if there's a reason I'm going through this, and I want to help others discover, what I've kind of discovered. And so that was I didn't know what to do. I was in the advertising, martech, as they call it, marketing technology and ad tech space.
Mhm.
And I just decided what I was going to do is, in my free time, I would start volunteering um, at a local here in Boulder, Colorado, at a cannabis accelerator program, and lending my talents to some of these up and coming cannabis brands, and in a way to kind of give back. And
Right.
through that process, I met the folks at Charlotte's Web. The timing was right, and they asked me to come on board full time. So I ditched my ad tech career and decided or actually took the keys to the car, so to speak, to become a marketer myself. Instead of working and supporting marketers, I became the marketer.
Right.
And as you described in your introduction, which thank you is very kind of you, we had great success. It was
Yes.
a phenomenal
10x.
success. After that, I had a nice consulting career for many, many years after that. And in the last couple years, I was starting to get a little bit bored
Mm,
because as a consultant, you don't really go too deep into
yeah.
any one company, right? You kind of work thinly across a lot of different companies.
Yes.
And I was missing being part of a team, the camaraderie, the shared mission, early mornings and late nights working on a project to kind of bring it to fruition. And just as I was kind of starting to think about how to look elsewhere and transition, and deal with those desires, I came across this opportunity at Ignaton, and it was just divine timing.
Mm,
Ignaton is focused on, health. We'll get into this more, I'm sure, as we go through the
yes.
conversation. It's focused a lot on brain and cognition, it's just why
Mhm.
we're talking to each other now. But that also hit a personal note with me because my great grandfather, when I was a little kid, I used to live right across the street from him, and we were best friends.
Mm,
And all of a sudden, he started down a path of cognitive decline
yeah.
and very rapidly went into, back in those days, this was a long time ago, they called it hardening of the arteries because they didn't have the terms for Alzheimer's or dementia back then.
Yeah.
But it was awful to witness. And within a couple of months, he didn't even know my name. And so I just immediately, again, I was touched by this opportunity to get involved with a supplement brand that is really helping people that are in that similar situation and helping folks
Wow.
strengthen their cognition. And also I'd had a really bad case of COVID.
Mm,
I was one of those that got really, really sick, and I had no taste or smell for about 2 years.
wow.
And I had brain fog that I couldn't even believe. I can't even know how to explain it. It was so
Wow.
bizarre. And I fought through that. And so I'm thinking, okay, when I saw this Igniton opportunity, to be able to help in both of those type of areas, people that are suffering from brain fog, it's very common these days. And, it's a women's health issue. A lot of women that are going through perimenopause and menopause are dealing with brain fog,
Right. Yes.
you know, So I just felt like this was a sign that I should get involved. And so I reached out and they liked me. And so here we are about a year and a half later, and business is growing very rapidly because we're really making an impact.
Yeah, there's so many testimonials, and I did take note of the women that are menopausal talking about how Igniton has been able to help them. Yeah, exciting stuff. Let's just aired another episode about brain health. We talk about mindset on this show a lot, but behind the way we think is our brain health, our actual whole physical health, and how we're responding and dealing with stuff like what you went through, which are pretty traumatic. The incident you had on the field and the COVID incident. It's like a backup and, trying to take your very essence of who you are and how you function away from you. How do you see Igniton really taking front, or let's just have you go into what Igniton really is and what are the substances and solutions that they're providing to us in the medical field.
Well, if I could start maybe a step before that, Dr. White,
Mhm.
if you wouldn't mind,
No,
I
go.
think it be might be easier for your listeners to follow the story this way. But our bodies, let's talk about what our bodies are first,
Uh-huh.
right? Our bodies are 70% water, right?
Yes.
Which is pretty interesting in a lot of ways. And I'll bring this back to Ignatons here in a few minutes, but
Mhm.
that's kind of the baseline. As human beings, we are 70% water. And
Right.
another thing that's very interesting about our bodies is at the moment of conception, what occurs? A
Mm,
spark of light. And our bodies continue to give off light throughout our entire lifetime. So we are water and we are light or
mm.
energy, if you will, that's continuing. And the water kind of helps act as a battery to generate that energy. If you really want to nerd out on that, but
Yeah.
that's kind of what's going on. And there's lots of studies that have been emerging about the human body and how it gives off light. It literally glimmers. And the the changes in this photonic emission of the body are now being linked to changes in energy metabolism.
Mm.
And there was even a study done last year that showed that the evidence is actually pointing to the role of light signals as being physiologically relevant and potentially useful as indicators for healthy and disease states.
Wow.
Bringing this back to Igniton, when we look and what got me sold on the opportunity to become part of this organization when I met with the founder, one of the first things he showed me before he told me about Ignitons was he showed me this image, and I can send it to you, and maybe you can share it with your group or your listeners or make it part of the show.
We would love to. Yeah.
An image of a water molecule that was a normal water molecule. And then there was a water molecule right next to it in this image he showed me that was igniton charged. Where they'd actually taken this energy, this quantum energy, and applied it to the hydrogen atom of the water, which
Mm.
is how it works. And I'll talk more about that in a minute. But just looking at this visualization right out of the gate, I said, oh my gosh, this, like, the igniton charged water molecule was in perfect symmetry, and it was very brilliant in terms of the colors that it was showing
Mm.
compared to this other water molecule, which was really rough around the edges. It didn't have any symmetry to it. It was ugly.
Mm.
It barely had any energy being emitted from it. And it was immediately evident to me that which one of those, since my body's 70% water,
Mm-hmm.
which one of those water molecules would I rather be? And
Right.
that igniton charged water molecule is due to the improved structure, the symmetry of it. It's
Right.
better in alignment with our bodies, which are 70% water, but then that it's giving off 3 times the amount of energy compared to the non-igniton charged water. And that
Mm.
energy measurement is simply light. So in essence, the igniton charge was providing symmetry and amplifying the light signal that the water was giving off. And that really just blew me away because then
Wow.
immediately I thought, well, that's why this product that we're in, this technology, really, Igniton is a technology company that happens to be working in some supplement products right now.
Yeah.
But that proved to me right out of the gate, I just jived. I understood. It's like, okay, now I get why this can be so powerful.
Mm-hmm.
But what we're doing, to your original question, how is all of this working? What are Ignitons? How does it work? How are we getting them into the water or getting them into our bodies? Ignitons are, technically speaking, the definition is that they are subatomic quasi particles of energy that come to Earth in waves from the sun. And so, what they're doing, they're an energy frequency. Back to Nikolai Tesla talking about energy, frequency, and vibration being the keys to the universe.
Mm.
And these, they're not visible. They're very, very tiny, and they're very, very super fast in terms of their vibration. So if you think about, some of your listeners may be thinking, well, this sounds like, woo woo, or it's science fiction. But we've all seen kind of the spectrum of light, right?
Yes.
And when you look at the spectrum of light, we only see with our eyes, we only perceive this little bitty sliver of what we call then reality.
Mm.
Well, this spectrum of what we cannot see, there's, 98% of the frequencies that are out there we can't see.
Yes.
And that is something that I would encourage everybody who's maybe a little skeptical of this to think about. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's
It's
not
not
there.
there.
And that's, part of one of the key things to understand about what we're doing. So we have created this on the sun. What's happening are these photons are coming out of the sun and they're interacting with this plasma that's in the atmosphere around the sun. And that interaction is creating this quantum phenomenon that
Mm.
is then the igniton waves that are being given off by the sun.
Yes.
What we've done in our laboratory here in Colorado, and all of this was studied in a very advanced quantum physics lab in Switzerland using some equipment that was actually rented from CERN. We're not affiliated with CERN in any way, but the most advanced quantum physics on the planet is going on right there.
There.
And
Yeah.
that's where all of this kind of grew out of that, tangentially, if you will.
Yes.
So what we've done is we've created a laboratory here in Colorado where we're trying to mimic those conditions. So the first thing we do is we have these very powerful space vacuum chambers. And so, because the sun exists in space, which is a vacuum,
Uh-huh.
so we need to start with creating a vacuum environment. And so
Oh.
we can create in a vacuum that's equivalent to 1/1 billionth of our atmosphere. Now, inside of this vacuum chamber, we're putting in ingredient powders. Things like citicoline, alpha GPC, nicotinamide ribose, resveratrol, berberine, PQQ, NADH. These are very well known and well researched ingredients. But what we're doing is we're putting these in various formulations into these vacuum chambers. We're then introducing a cold plasma cloud that's charged with electrons inside of
Mhm.
this vacuum chamber. And then we're using very advanced laser photonics systems to shoot the lasers through these clouds of plasma in the vacuum to kind of create this same thing that's going on in the sun. And we're able to direct that energy into these powders, which are residing inside of the vacuum chambers. Scientifically, what's occurring is the energy is looking for the hydrogen atom, as I
Mm.
referred to earlier about water.
Yes.
Our technology is able to bind the energy to the proton of the hydrogen atom. And that then it doesn't change it chemically or molecularly, but that it excites the hydrogen atom or kind of activates it. And again, since our body is 70% water, which is H2O,
Mhm.
when we have put these ingredients that have this energetic charge into their hydrogen molecules into our body, they perform better than the same ingredients that don't have that charge and better than a placebo. So
Wow.
that's the nerd version of what we're doing. Hopefully, I was able to
Yeah.
explain it in a way where you can
Oh, you
understand it and
sure
maybe.
did. If I got it, yeah, I'm pretty sure most people will. 90% of people will because it's so simple, and I'm connecting with it, and I'm actually feeling like I'm in the lab watching it happen play by play. So that's really good picture painting. Everybody gets
So
that.
there's nothing science fiction about it, right?
No.
It's very easy to understand, and people, if you think about it, we don't understand how quantum computing works, right? I don't understand it. I mean, most of
Right.
us don't,
Right.
but we know that it just works, right? And so we're doing very similar things for the human body, I like to say, as Google and NVIDIA are doing for computing. It's just that we are doing it for supplements instead of hardware on computers.
Yes, exactly. Whoa. So, why do you believe that traditional substance may not always deliver the results that people expect when we take into consideration what you just told us? Literally. How do you
Well, I
connect
think
those two?
I'm hypothesizing now, right?
Of
So what I'm
course.
about to say, I don't have evidence that suggests this, but
Right.
if you just looked at that image that I described earlier of the regular water compared to the Ignaton charged water, our bodies are primarily, I mean, we're perfection, right? So we
Mhm.
start off perfect in most of us that are born that way, and then over the course of time, stress, bad food, bad air, you know, lack of exercise, all of these things contribute to a imperfection of our bodies. And that breaks down, again, my hypothesis is that's breaking down that water molecule to make it look more ugly, like the one that I saw in the example that I
Yeah.
shared, where there's a lack of symmetry, there's very low energy or voltage that's coming from it. And so what we're doing is we're amplifying that voltage. We're providing the symmetry is almost perfect in terms of the outcome. And again, I'll send this image to you, and your listeners can also
Yes, we will.
find this on our science tab on our website as well, on
Yes.
ignaton.com. But I think that that's what's going on because the ingredients are doing their job as best they can for anybody, any of us who take them. But when
Mhm.
we apply this energetic charge to them, they're more perfect. And that's what our bodies are really designed to work with is perfection. And when we're able to put that in, the science that we're doing says that it's working better. So I don't exactly know why, but the important thing is that it is.
Yes, it is. Because whenever we talk about emerging technologies and health, of course, skepticism naturally comes into the conversation. And honestly, that's healthy, right? People want evidence, they want proof, and they should. Your company has conducted university validated studies published in peer reviewed journals showing improvements in areas like memory, attention, inflammation markers so big.
Mhm.
Let's talk about this. What have those studies actually demonstrated so far about quantum charge nutrients and their effect in our body? And specifically, what does a regimen probably look like of Ignaton that's helping people?
Great question. So, starting with our cognition product first, the metrics that have been measured in these studies are an 83% increase in attention,
Mm,
a 51% increase in mental performance,
whoa.
a 28% increase in short term memory, and a 25% increase in operational memory. And perhaps most importantly, everybody in the study, 100%, saw, and these are statistically relevant numbers, right? These aren't just like this is a number for a number. All
Mm-hmm.
of these numbers were
Yes, fact.
statistically greater than the same ingredients that didn't have the energy and significantly greater than a placebo.
Mm-hmm.
And 100% of the people that participated in the study saw some form of significant improvement in one of these key areas, which is just remarkable.
It is.
W- From and our products are, from a inflammation marker standpoint,
That's
our
the big one.
longevity product that we call it,
Yeah.
that one is measured on, via a blood test. So we're looking at key biomarkers. There was a 37% decrease in IL-6 or interleukin 6.
Mm-hmm.
There was a 28% decrease in C reactive protein or CRP, a 13% decrease in GGT, a
Mm,
9% decrease in diastolic blood pressure, and an 8% decrease in systolic blood pressure. So, and all of those numbers were statistically greater again than the same ingredients that don't have the energetic charge and greater than placebo. So those are the two things that we've developed so far. We have a new product we're working on now focused on REM sleep. So it's designed to, and we don't have the data yet on this one, so we haven't released it,
wow.
but
This is
it's
huge.
it's designed to increase the amount of REM sleep that you're getting. Now, it's not going to put you to sleep. We're not focusing on getting you to sleep with this product. We're focusing on what happens once you are asleep so that the increased REM sleep actually will enable you to be more rested. And so, even though you may not get as much sleep, hopefully you can get better, higher quality REM sleep and then
Which is
have a
important.
better outcome in your life.
That's huge. You hit on two main things for me is the I suffer with an autoimmune disease, so inflammation is always the thing that's being monitored and they look at that through
Mhm.
certain levels of blood work. Now that's a game changer because here's the thing, I am aware of having an autoimmune disease. But many people have an autoimmune disease and it hasn't been discovered yet because it's not one of those like lupus or the ones even the one I have is Hashimoto's very way more common than people think. And of course, there's no cure, but it's one that's very tricky to catch because it just has symptoms everywhere. It looks like thyroid's disease is thyroidal, but it doesn't test the same way you would say, oh, you have inactive or overactive thyroid. It only demonstrates as one of those at some point, but then sometimes it don't, but you're still carrying it. That's huge. And then when you talk about sleep, that's one of the bigger things that we've been having more and more in our conversations here when it comes to brain health because it's not only about how long you sleep, but it's the quality of that REM sleep. So that's groundbreaking. The wellness industry is obviously rapidly evolving, Ashley. We've moved from vitamins to how do they call it? Nut, nutraceuticals or nutraceuticals, right? To biohacking. And now we're hearing about this quantum biology, which makes absolute sense with some of the other metaphysical things we're discovering about our bodies. Where do you think the next decade of health innovation is heading? And how might technology like yours reshape the way we think about aging, cognition, and vitality altogether?
Well, it's a great question, and I think, you know, one of the areas that we kind of fit into, you mentioned biohacking, we definitely fit into that
Yeah.
universe. Dave Asprey, we debuted last year at his biohacking conference, and we sold out everything we had in a couple of hours, and we sold out the next 2 months of our production in 24 hours.
Whoa.
So the biohacking audience is real. That
Yes.
movement is really taking ground, and they're interested in new ways that go beyond just anatomy and physiology. There's nothing wrong with anatomy and physiology. It's
No,
just
but we're
that it's a bit
bigger than that.
antiquated.
Yeah.
We are bigger than that, right? We are energetic light beings is what we
Yes.
are. And so if you're not really focused on understanding the energy and the quantum realm of the human body, you're really missing out, and I
Under
think from a
half of your
medical
existence.
medical community is learning this. Light is energy and frequency and vibration. Our bodies give off and emit light. When that light gets distorted, it's a precursor and it's indicative that disease is happening.
Mhm.
So the mitochondria are a big
Mhm.
topic in health and wellness. What do? Well, they release photons. They're what's releasing this light in our body during their
Yes.
ATP production. And, red light therapy and things like that are energy frequency bioenergetics, if you will.
Yes.
Those are working directly on the mitochondria.
Yes.
And every ingredient that we use in our 2 products that we have today, every single ingredient benefits the mitochondria. So this excited hydrogen or activated hydrogen that we're enabling through the quantum charging process is working to benefit that mitochondria with that excited hydrogen. So it's giving off more light.
Yeah.
Now, one thing that I'll share here with you as well, which, we focus on the science of cognition and longevity.
Mhm.
There's another important topic happening here, which is the whole concept of consciousness. And
Mm.
consciousness is hard to define, but one way to define consciousness is through the light that we're giving off. The more,
Yes.
again, back to energy, frequency, and vibration, the more
Mhm.
light that we're giving off, the higher level of consciousness we have. And I have a couple of examples I'd share with your listeners, um, for the holidays, and because I've been taking Ignaton and I take both products, and I felt the increases in cognition. I felt the increases in, the improvements in inflammation markers. I felt those things right away, just like our studies. Our studies were done over 30 days,
Yeah.
um, but the increase in consciousness, I wasn't even looking for it. It just
Oh.
over the holidays, about 6, 7 months into my routine, I encountered some family members. After 3 or 4 days with your family in the holidays, things can get kind of rough sometimes,
Yeah.
right? So,
Oh, yeah. Oh,
um,
yeah.
so I walk into my house and I start talking to a couple family members. And there's another family member there who's kind of off to the side, and she doesn't like what she's hearing from me, even though I'm not talking to her. She interjects something very nasty into the conversation, very nasty, inappropriate, and
Mm.
harmful. And my old ego-driven self would have probably turned around. I would have snapped. I would have yelled. I would have,
Let her
put
have
her in
it.
her place with
Yeah.
let her have it with my ego, right?
Yeah.
But I kid you not, Dr. White, I wasn't looking for anything like this. I just all of a sudden, time seemed to pause and stand still. And I almost
Whoa.
came out of my body and it was like, here's your chance. How are you going to respond to her? And I was able to, in real time, nobody knew. It wasn't like I was sitting there,
It's
scratching my
scratching your
head.
head, but time stood still, but it's micro seconds.
Nanoseconds, right?
Yeah.
And I just turned to her and I smiled. And I went back to my conversation with the other people. And later, my wife told me, she was like, I was so blown away. She goes, I expected you to just fly off the handle You were gonna she would have been angry at me for days. My son was there. He would have been embarrassed that his dad lost his temper, and then
Yeah.
I would have felt bad for 3
But
days
the whole
because,
thing.
what a jerk I was, right? And
Yeah.
and and I avoided all of that, changed in essence, I changed reality for not only myself, but for everybody in that room. That when I came back, I was talking to our founder. I said, I had the weirdest thing happen to us or to me over the holidays. I shared the story with him, and he said, that's the increased consciousness that's building up from the body is accumulating more light, and you're able to measure and manage your reactions better.
At a higher level.
So again, we don't have peer-reviewed studies that were done in universities to prove this,
That part,
like we
yeah.
do on the cognition and the longevity, but I've had a couple more instances like this since then. Time has seemed to stand still, and I'm able to think about in nanoseconds,
Really
think
think
about
about
how
the
do I want to
thoughts you're thinking
handle
about.
exactly. Very well said. That's what gets me most excited, honestly, about the product. I love that we're helping cognition and inflammation, but if we can get people to be kinder to each other,
Yes.
we're talking about a game changer for the world here, right? So again, I don't want to get too far ahead here because I know
No.
that's none of this has been studied.
No, but
It's
it's
a
I
very
can
real
see it. Here's not to interrupt you, and I want you to come back to that. But I gotta add, I firmly believe that they do have the if you're working on cognition and inflammation, because inflammation makes the brain foggy, which makes you irritable, which will have you functioning in a lower vibration. That for me just goes together scientifically, and there's research. I got so excited. We've been talking about it a lot on this podcast. So there are people who are having these outbursts and they're snapping, and their family or and friends, and they're withdrawing from them. And like, I don't know you to be this person. Well, I believe that light energy that you talked about, the two different lights, and the one where it's murky, for lack of a better word, as we age, this life, as they say, starts lifing, and it's a buildup. And we have these irritants that's lying beneath. But then physically, what's happening to us physically now comes into play, and it now makes us this foggy, frustrated, need more sleep, can't get it, gotta keep working, gotta keep doing. So we snap. So I can see if you're taking medicine that's helping you cognitively get clear, it's lowering inflammation in your body, and then it's also helping you get better sleep. What you got? A person who is more rational and can think clearly.
That's right. No, I think you put it together very, very well, Dr. White. I might even steal that from you
You should
in future
because I
conversations.
and so if you there's been so many episodes about on here that we're talking about the connection there with mood and behavior and thoughts, and then creates think, speak, do, become. That's what you speak, what you do, and how you become, the results you have in your life. So for me, what I've learned is I was massively suffering when I was in big flare up mode for a long period of time. Body was swollen, face is swollen. And when I get a flare up with Hashimoto's, I become sort of like short tempered. I'm not processing. I'm foggy. I'm trying to have conversations and I can't bring the words out. They say it's right there at the tip of my tongue. It can't come out. Once I allow my body to heal and I start lowering the intake of sugar, which again is one of those things that for me, gluten and sugar has the inflammation levels high. So I am foggy and I'm all these things, bloating and everything. I became so much sharper that I went back to where 6.5 hours of sleep, 7 hours of sleep, great. 6 hours, even 5.5 hours of sleep 3 nights a week is fine for me. And I'm waking up well rested versus when I'm sleeping for 9. So I had to link those. You can take it. I feel like I've been in enough study and research to say if anything you're doing is affecting those pillars, you're going to have a higher conscious, you're going to be a calmer being, you're going to respond better to life itself, and you'll become unrecognizable because all this time I say it's not you, it's not you, it's biology. A lot of the
No,
anger and
and
irritation is biology. Go ahead.
You hit on something. I know we're probably getting close to needing
We're
to
getting
wrap up,
closer.
but one
Yeah,
of the things one of the things I wanted to talk about, because you brought it up about vibration, and I talk about this all the time because the media, our society, the power structures that are out there, they want to keep us in this very low vibrational state.
come
They
on.
want to keep us in fear and anger and division. And if you
Mm-hmm.
look at like just the vibrations of energies, those vibrations are at the very bottom. They're very low and slow. At the
Mm,
top of the vibrational field is bliss and joy and love and gratitude.
peace and gratitude.
And
Yes.
that's what, and this increased consciousness is bringing us up that vibrational ladder. And so if we can, through whatever means necessary, whether it's meditation, whether it's through church, through prayer, through community groups, taking Ignatons as part of that practice, any and all of the above, if we can raise our vibration, just not even all of us, just a
Mm-hmm.
few of us, metaphorically speaking, right? There's
Yeah.
8 billion people in the world. So a few might be a couple million,
Right.
but that that level of energy, since we're all connected and we're all in this universe together, that energy in physics has to raise the vibration of the collective. And I give this example all the time. My wife is probably tired of hearing about this. She said that example is so silly, but I like to simplify this. If let's say there was 10 people at a dinner party and there was a baby pool of water, and everybody was instructed to put their hand in the water and just move it as slow as possible, what's going to happen to that water? It's going to have a lot of very slow, small ripples, barely any
Yes.
disturbance.
Yes.
But if just one person puts their hand in the water and starts going fast, what happens to all of the water?
Mm,
It speeds up, right? And that's physics. And that's the same thing as what we're talking about here. If a few billion people can raise their vibrations of positivity, it physically has to break that low vibrational barrier that we're being held into by the media and by the power structures that are out there. It's just physics. This is not a hypothesis.
this
That's
is
physics.
that's physics, and it is. And I'm here to say, yes, I've seen it and studied it, and it is absolutely true. And I'm experiencing it just like you did with your family member. That is this true story of my own life. And I haven't even taken this medication, but the dedication to work on, how I show up. And I say some of us, like for me, I feel like I was born and raised in a sort of a more sheltered and a consciously just being challenged to be consciously hired from the get go, or maybe I was just born that way. But I know when life was hitting really hard and I was at the crossroad to take the way where I get dark and
Right.
egocentric and more self centered than kind than I was. And I said no and continue to say so. I'm like, man, it's really hard. I remember saying life is really getting at me and all the kindness and person and that I am is just not good for this world. This world is just a cruel, hard place. But if that's how I see the world, that's what the world would be. So I changed that. I didn't understand mindset back then, did not understand energy and all that stuff, but I feel like that's been my portion because I just meet great people all the time. Of course, I meet some people who are quote unquote I say having their moment, and my thing is to just let them have it, just like you let your cousin have it. It's like let her have her moment. I'm not going down with her. She's already in a place
That's right.
vibrationally that I get to in these few seconds. But again, I believe biology, because of our environment, because of what's happening without our permission in our environment, there's so much negativity. I tell people plug out. Like it's
That's right.
no more we can tell people to just unplug for moments in your day. Don't listen to the news as much because you're like, well, yeah, but remember our grandparents when they didn't have these screens and this technology, they only knew there was a war in Iran because it was on the radio if they had one. but they didn't get play-by-play images because images create that light creates we believe that and it becomes our beliefs that the world is
And,
hard, that it is cruel. So I
and
I
guess
can't
what?
help but saying that. We're seeing it. We're not just hearing a report. We're watching video clips now.
And guess what? When you go and you go and talk to other people at a dinner party and you talk about how bad things are and the government this and the government that, guess what you're doing? You're putting your hand in that water and going slow like everybody else. If you
Come
come into
on.
that room and you talk about how you're grateful for your family, you can be kind to other people in that room, guess what you're doing? You're vibrating like this and you're bringing the positivity up. And so, what if the way to really change the world wasn't to complain about it and just participate in the negativity? But what if the way to change the world was actually to change yourself? And then that would physically actually change the world.
That's how we change the world. Period. Period. That is the Mindset Mastery Moments way. Absolutely change yourself, change your own belief systems. And I saying we've been looking this season, we've had so much depth about looking at the biology beyond what we think. There's more to our thoughts, which is this type of biology. This is why biohacking is so important. Oh my goodness, you have to come back and we talk some more. But before we go, Ashley, here is something that I have to ask you after everything that you've done, because you've already shared that time when you flipped your script. What does success mean to you? How do you define it for yourself?
Well, that's a great question because it's all about this part of the conversation now for me, and that's been flipped. It used to be all about, the career or the money, and money's still important. We all want
Of
money. We all
course.
want to be we all want to be comfortable, right?
Hmm.
But for me, it's about being a kind, better person every day, and there's no finish line to that, and nobody's perfect. I'm not going to be perfect. We're going to have down moments, but if I can make my family, my son in particular is a very spiritual being, and I think about just even how I learn from him. If I can just keep him being proud of me as his father, then
Mm,
I'm that's success. And I think at the end of the day, I believe it's physics. The way to, I've always wanted to change the world. And I think that the way to do that is by focusing on myself. It doesn't mean that I'm ignoring the world. It means that I have a higher viewpoint. I understand that there is negativity everywhere.
mhm.
And that my way to help that is to be positive and be
Be
grateful
the
for
light.
what I have in my life and to be kind to other people. And then that will, in physics, it has to help the world.
And that we control. Love that. So brilliant. So, Ashley, we do something here on Mindset Mastery Moments called Mindset Bites to Go. It's where I step away from the microphone and the camera, and it's just you and our listeners and viewers for about 90 seconds. And I want to ask you this: if someone's listening today wants to start taking better ownership of their health and their longevity, in addition to taking Ignaton, what are the first steps they should focus on? Here you go.
So Igniton is not a magic bullet. There are no magic bullets, but there are things that can help you get to where you want to be in your life. And the first thing is diet. You are what you eat. If you can eat healthy, organic foods or at least whole foods, you're going to raise your own vibration. The second thing is diet, or to diet is exercise. You need to get some movement, even if it's just a walk here and there or some chair, standing up and down air squats in your office. The third thing that's really important is meditation or prayer, quieting the mind and finding time to have gratitude within that, even if it's just one thing that you're thankful for, or having a warm bed to sleep in. And finally, then Igniton and other advanced supplements come into play to kind of get you to the next level. But there's no magic bullet. If you're not taking those first three steps, then a supplement of any type, even a one that's quantum charged like ours, is going to have a hard time really working with your physiology. But if you are incorporating those three steps, you're going to have great success when you take Igniton. Thank you.
Wow. Oh my goodness. I can't wait to try it because it's definitely something. I know my mom takes another supplement I wouldn't mention. She's been taking for years and it does help with the um the inflammation in our body. And so I would love to introduce her to Ignaton, and we see how that goes for us in our first 30 days. Doing all the things that you said is so important. Like that, I really believe no one should be living without nutrition, movement, meditation or breath work, however you want to call it, and supporting your body with supplements. I take supplements and I also watch what I eat and I move, because if I don't, I wouldn't show up here the way I do. Because I'm responsible
It's
for a lot of
essential.
things. Yes,
It's
exactly.
essential.
And get good sleep. Get good quality sleep. Go ahead. Go ahead, Ashley.
I was going to say the sleep. I think if you do all of those things that we just talked about, I think you'll find the actual sleep comes easier to you.
True that. When I lay down, I'm out. I'm out because I have done it all. I've lifted weights. I've had fun laughing. I'm talking to great people. I'm, coaching and mentoring and just living out in my purpose. Like you said, putting that bright light into the world as only I can and I'm responsible for. And everybody else just decides if they want to come up or not, because I'm not going down. Ashley, tell us, what is your favorite way to connect with you, and how do we connect with this innovation? Just share a bit of us and how we can connect.
Yes, I'm at ashley@ignaton.com, and Ignaton is Igniton. Make sure you type it out if you're looking for us online, because Google sometimes corrects it to ignition.
Ignition, yeah.
And it's not. I'm also on social media, on Twitter at AGAGA, so Agaga. And I'm at Ashley On podcast on Instagram. And I just got started on that, so we're just getting started there.
Awesome.
But I've got a podcast that I'm doing kind of for fun.
Great. Awesome. We'll tune in for more stuff, and you'll have to come back and we talk some a little bit more about biohacking and quantum wellness, right? So we'll have all the links in the description wherever you're watching and listening to this episode. Ashley, it has been a fascinating conversation exploring the intersection of science, innovation, and human potential. I just love it. Disruptor, if today's conversation sparked your curiosity about the future of wellness and longevity, make sure you share this episode with someone who needs to hear it, and check out ignaton.com. It's in the description where you're watching this, and you'll see some additional things that we will post, some of the links and the research that has been done. The peer review, will put direct links in the notes, because I had a good time looking at those myself. Go ahead and just let Ashley know. Reach out to him online, listen to his podcast so you can learn more. All his stuff aligns so well with our platform. I know you all are going to love it. Let him know that you heard him here and you resonate with this. And if you do take Ignaton, write to us too and let us know that you've taken it. We'd love to hear how you're transforming your own life. So until the next episode, keep mastering your mindset. Think, speak, do become. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks again, Ashley.
Thank you so much. Great meeting you, Dr. Whyte.
You as well.